Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome back inside number 9. This time I'm going to give my complete breakdown of Series 2 of the British black comedy anthology. Let's take a look at what the dynamic duo of Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith were able to pen after they got the ball rolling with their groundbreaking first series. Here we go. Episode 1, La Couchette. Remember how Series 1 opened with a really awkward episode that crammed a large amount of characters into such a tiny space? Well, for Series 2's opener, it's much of the same, but now it's on a train, and a French train to boot. It's one of those sleeper trains, you know, the ones where passengers have beds they can use for overnight journeys. Shearsmith is nice and relaxed, ready for some shut-eye, but is immediately disturbed by a grunting, coughing, noisy, farting, snoring Pemberton. Things couldn't get much worse, right? Well, this cabin is number 9, so of course they bloody can. Our next guests arrive, including Hayley Cropper from Corrie and my fellow northerner Mark Benton, and then an Australian backpacker who talks irritatingly on the phone and leaves the door open. Shearsmith is clearly a bit of an uppity person with a stick up his arse, but equally, you can totally feel his burning anger boiling up inside him. It's paced and edited so well, whereby every annoying development cuts right back to Shearsmith, and I was fully feeling the irritation. Sadly, that irritation only cranked up further upon the arrival of Jack Whitehall as the backpacker's mate, and hereby comes the thick slice of plot for this episode, as a dead body on the top bunk drops to the floor of the cabin. I should also point out at this stage that for the entire episode, Shearsmith and Pemberton talk to each other in German, unsubtitled by the way, so we need to follow the other characters' interactions to get a feel for their conversation. But their accents and pronunciations are pretty spot on. It's super impressive actually. Anyway, back to the narrative. Shearsmith is a very high positioned doctor who has a scheduled meeting in Geneva with the WHO, so he makes the decision that rather than stopping the train to declare the dead body, adding a delay to the journey, making Shearsmith miss his meeting, that they should just put the body back and act like they'd never seen it. Then there's the couple who want to make their daughter's wedding, and Whitehall's a stowaway, so there's 2 more reasons not to alert the authorities. The climax cranks everything up to a very bizarre notch when Pemberton needs an emergency shit into the wedding shoe box. The train hits a deer and comes to a halt. Arguments, squabbling, comes out of nowhere and is randomly disorientating. For a second, they try to make you think that because big Hayley Cropper isn't in the cabin, she's committed suicide, causing the train to stop. What a random injection to the plot that is, and it was never convincing anybody. There wasn't even any setup that would make you remotely think in that direction. The punchline here is an absolute cracker. Comes out of nowhere, but it smacks. Shearsmith reveals that he killed the passenger, who was Dr. Meyer, the second candidate for the position he's interviewing for in Geneva. He put him out of the way so he could get the job. But then, mere seconds later, the disgusting pig Pemberton reveals that he is Dr. Meyer. So Shearsmith has murdered the wrong man. This is a belter of an ending that came after what was otherwise a pretty lackluster episode. The boys write brilliant comedy and thrive on punchlines, and this one very much feels like a situational, observational comedy jabbing at this form of travelling, while also being stacked with humorous moments, which is fine, but the plot elements didn't sink too deep into me. The dead body falling off the bunk was just a really sudden injection into the plot, but then it didn't have an awful lot of impact until the very end. He just kinda gets forgotten about a little bit, not remaining at the forefront like he should. La Couchette is overall a pretty fun way to kick off the series, because generally episode 1 tends to be a bit of a lark, and this achieves that. But for me, not a strong episode, and not one that grabs me and makes me want to stick it on for repeat viewings. It's pretty decent though. Episode 2, The 12 Days of Christine. Here we go guys, this is it, generally viewed across the board as the single greatest Inside Number 9 episode. Who's Christine? She's Sheridan Smith, and in this episode we see moments from 12 days of her life, all taking place inside her flat. We see her meet her boyfriend, Adam, on New Year's Eve, then transport to 13 months later where they're happily together. But Christine receives a Valentine's Day card in the post from her ex-boyfriend that she she hasn't seen since she was 12. Next, Mother's Day, where we're introduced to Christine's mother and a photo of the ex-boyfriend, who the mother reveals died when he was 16, which Christine forgets. Quite a big thing to forget. The subject of marriage is brought up, but Christine is unsure about the idea. Next day, Adam moves into the flat, and Christine plays Time to Say Goodbye by Andrea Bocelli on CD. Eggs are thrown off the walls in the flat, leading Christine to seeing Shearsmith dressed in a drenched overcoat with steamed up glasses. Next day, we see Christine is now pregnant, building a cot for the baby with Adam. Next is the baby crying over a monitor, and Adam sings Time to Say Goodbye to the baby. But then Christine hears the voice of the mysterious Eggman again. Christine's 30th birthday comes next, with a big family gathering in the flat. The thorn that sticks out here is that Adam comes around with a woman he works with. He and Christine are seemingly on a rocky road. Next day, Christine's dad has now died, and she and Adam are even more irritable with each other. Then it's their son's first day of school, and by this point, Adam and Christine have divorced. When Christine is at her lowest point, she speaks to the spirit of her dad, jumping next to Halloween, where Shearsmith reappears trying to steal her son, Jack. Next, the son has burnt his hand on a sparkler on bonfire night, but his marks have disappeared. Christine's mother reminds her that that happened to Christine when she was a child. Christine is getting everything jumbled up. The last day adds to the confusion, as we now are at a Christmas dinner where Christine's dad is alive and well, her university flatmate who moved out years ago is back, her gay best friend, played by Pemberton, is there, as well as her mother. And here is where a nuke drops. Christine is handed a photo album of all the key moments of her life. Baby photos, her as a kid, photos with Adam and her son, the Halloween party. It's like her whole life is flashing before her eyes. That's because it is. Christine has been in a car accident. Everything we've seen in this episode has been key moments of her life, which she's remembering right before her death. But the real world has bled through into the memories. The flashing lights on the Christmas tree, the flashing lights of the emergency service vehicles. Shearsmith in the court is the man who caused the crash, standing in the rain. The sounds of car alarms can be heard throughout, as well as Time to Say Goodbye, which is playing on the car radio. The smashed eggs in the kitchen, a box of smashed eggs on the passenger seat. Christine's memories become jumbled up because her brain is slowly switching off. The realization is gut-wrenching, and the silence of her realization is like a black hole that you fall right into. This is number 9's most beautifully crafted episode, not only in terms of the script, but in terms of the characterization, symbolism, meaning, and the soundscape for it. It's just gorgeous and haunting. It makes you yourself reflect on your own key memories and sink into melancholy, pondering your own achievements and consider your own inevitable death. It teaches you to think about everyone you love and everything you've done, and hold on to it while you can. Push yourself to do more and treasure whatever it is you possess. And when you die, you'll look back on all those precious moments once more too. The 12 Days of Christine makes me cry every time I watch it, and is the only number 9 episode to make me cry. It's just so potent, and not only tells its own story brilliantly, involving really relatable characters in relatable scenarios, but long after the credits roll, it makes you think about your own life. It just lingers with you. It's more than a TV episode. It's a thing of beauty and a modern fable for holding on to what you've got. Life is fragile, and not everyone lives to be as old as they desire. Accidents happen. Death occurs every day, and none of us ever falls asleep knowing for a fact that we will wake up the next day. So live your life to the fullest, always. That's how this episode makes me feel, and it's how it makes a lot of people feel. It's why it's held in such high regard as the greatest episode Pemberton and Shearsmith have created together, because it's just undiluted magic. Episode 3, The Trial of Elizabeth Gadge. For this installment, we take a trip to the village of Little Happens, which is a brilliant name, for a witch trial. This one quite clearly takes influence from the British folk horror genre, which Shearsmith and Pemberton are so fond of, with films like Witchfinder General and The Blood on Satan's Claw. Here, the boys play two hunters of the supernatural, travelling around performing judicial investigations into mysterious beings, teaming up here with David Warner as as Justice Pike. In this case, it's Elizabeth Gadge, claimed to be a sorceress who takes the stand. The accusations against Gadge are hilariously woolly and get increasingly ridiculous. Pemberton's character sees completely through the bias and bullshit, while Shearsmith is pantomimingly slipshod. The structure here is a court case, so the progression is all based upon continuous layers of investigation peeling back to keep you engaged, but the engagement is only kept so potent from how ridiculous it is. Shearsmith is having so much fun here. You can hear the influence of Vincent Price coming through in the way he pronounces his words, albeit a British equivalent.
Make a note, Mr. Clark, that Elizabeth Gadge confesses having had a discourse with the demon known as Snowflake.
You will each be tied in a prescribed fashion and cast into the moat.
The script is very tight, and what's very interesting is that this episode's dialect is heavily colloquial to the time period setting, and listening to it gave me massive vibes of the dialogue written by Robert Eggers for The Witch. Interestingly, The Witch was released at the Sundance Festival in 2015, only a few months before the trial of Elizabeth Gadge, so I wonder if there was any influence to be had there, or if it's just a coincidence. The comedy here is a bit more highbrow than usual, which I think suits the style perfectly. Like when Shearsmith asks what named backwards is, giving it an incorrect spelling of demon, or how the Nutter couple, yeah, that's their family name, say they saw Elizabeth holding an imp that was disguised as a small mouse and spoke in a strange language similar to the squeaking of a mouse. So, obviously, it's a mouse. But down the line, Gadge is found guilty because they bring the mouse to the stand. They bring the mouse to the stand? That's such a funny sentence. And Shearsmith drops breadcrumbs in front of her so that naturally that's the direction the mouse heads. It's daft, but sadly accurate. This kind of blind faith and careless ignorance were commonplace during the witch trials. Shearsmith has gone too far with his powers, so Pemberton burns him at the stake in place of Gadge. But oh, ball ache, Elizabeth actually is a witch. This one really has grown on me since I first saw it. It's a slow burn and an acquired taste, but I did enjoy it a decent amount. David Warner is having so much fun here with plenty of gay jokes involved, which are really well set up and the punchlines are splendid. It's still not amongst my top favourite episodes, but I'm now more inclined to stick it back on for a repeat viewing when doing a marathon watch. The cast have a lot of fun, the script is intriguing to listen to because of the dialect, with a lot of playful language for the comedic elements. The twist wasn't the biggest hitter ever though, in all honesty. You mean the woman accused of being a witch that clearly isn't a witch is clearly a witch? Ooh, what a twist. But the highlight here for me is definitely Shearsmith chewing the scenery and enjoying himself in a subgenre he clearly has a fondness for. Not a bad episode, this one. Episode 4, Cold Comfort. Here we go. This is my number 1 favourite number 9 episode ever. Where do I start? Well, the structure and format of this episode are genius for a number 9 scenario. It's all based in a call centre where volunteers work and chat to troubled people, like an emotional support line. Pemberton signs up for the job and is shown the ropes of what to do by Shearsmith. But the way the episode is pieced together is brilliant, as the screen displays CCTV footage of multiple cameras around the office areas, with the main image being on Pemberton from a camera on his desk. As the episode goes on, your eyes drift between the cameras as you try to identify developments in the plot, which there are many of, and that's what I love so much. You can watch this episode back several times and spot new moments or signposts for where the story ultimately leads. What's crazy is Pemberton and Shearsmith directed this themselves, something which is an incredibly rare occurrence in their projects, and everything was choreographed so that the multiple camera shots on screen are synchronized to one another. This episode's perfect timing isn't from post-production, it's literally from perfect timing. Oh god, I've got so ahead of myself, I haven't even properly begun to dig into the plot yet, so let's do that. Naturally, at these kind of call centers, you have to be emotionally neutral, but remain empathic so that you can listen to your caller's problems and calmly comfort them in order to improve their mental state. But that also means that on a daily daily basis, you're going to run into people who either overemphasize a simple problem or who are literally at the very lowest points of their lives. For a brand new employee in this world, that is bloody daunting to deal with, and we follow Pemberton as he makes those type of calls that break him down and make him question if he's got the right mental capacity for dealing with them. At first, the calls are very trivial, and Pemberton is advised to not get involved with the callers, otherwise they'll become trapped with the burden of damaging themselves. But then Pemberton gets a call from a 16-year-old girl named Chloe who hates her life and is going through a bit of pain via stomach cramps. Then the pin suddenly drops, but explodes when it hits the floor, as Chloe reveals that she has taken some tablets. This line is just like a bomb going off. Pemberton is conversing with a young girl that is potentially in the middle of committing suicide. We don't see any of this. All we have to play off are Pemberton's facial expressions and Chloe's voice on the phone call. The narrative is pushed to you so minimally, but it's a tour de force of a framework that hooks you right in. Chloe asks Pemberton to sing Shine by Take That, and Jesus Christ, the anguish and pain on Pemberton's face is incredible. He is an A-class serious actor and one of the country's most underrated talents. Seconds after the call ends, a call comes in where, from Pemberton's point of view, he's just listened to a girl die, and now he's got to chat to an old lady whose cat just died. And because he's just had a whirlwind of a life-changing moment, he speaks to her improperly and insults her. A few days later, another woman in the office says that she had a call from a guy whose mother had just killed herself because her cat had died. Pemberton's shaken up yet again, as the way he spoke to her on the support line likely led to her taking her own life, and now he faces the consequences of his actions. When Pemberton helps a new employee settle into the job, the first call comes from Chloe, saying the exact same things that she said to Pemberton before. She keeps ringing the number back over and over again, tormenting Pemberton. It's like a sick, twisted game of psychological torture, and it is so masterfully done here. The acting is just exquisite. When reviewing the footage back, it's the office boss, Shea Smith, who is the voice of Chloe. This is an incredible shift in the story, and one that comes as a complete surprise. All those prank calls led to Pemberton losing his cool, causing the death of the old woman by accident. The next new recruit comes into the office, sat right behind Pemberton as he talks to Shea Smith. But the new recruit is the old woman's son seeking revenge. Bloody hell, this ending is as sharp as shattered glass. What an episode. Nothing in the history of Number 9 gripped me as tightly as Cold Comfort did, and it still does, even on multiple repeat viewings. It's a masterpiece in every single way. Never drags, hooks you from the first minute, and carries you through to the end, wanting to see more. It's a diamond of a production with fantastic acting and editing, and the narrative framework uppercuts you with magnetism. You just stick to this episode and can't let it go no matter how hard you try. I can't sing its praises much more highly, in all honesty. It's still unmatched to me, and is the best thing Pemberton and Shea Smith have directed, in my opinion, and only makes me wish they directed more together, even if it's for shows or films that they don't star in themselves. Completely unforgettable and a joy to experience every single time. Episode 5. Oh, do I have to? For God's... Alright, Nana's Party. You know how last time I debunked the idea that Last Gasp is the worst episode of Inside Number 9? Well, get ready for this review. A family featuring the single most OCD mother to ever live are preparing the house for the arrival of the family Nana on her 79th birthday. Pemberton is the joke of a dad, while Shea Smith tells the jokes of a dad. The whole time, Pemberton is hiding underneath the cake to get back on Shea Smith's practical jokes in the past. And all the time we are waiting for the grand reveal, we get stuck with more filler than Rob Beckett's teeth. Subplot of a former alcoholic sister who's sneaking a drink in a suntan bottle. Cheesy middle-class white family humour. It's just dripping with cringe, and despite that being the intention, it's still such a struggle to get through. Like, genuinely, at the best of times, it's painful. It's like Alfred Hitchcock's Rope starred all the awkward family gatherings empowering moments from your troubled past. Every character's story in this episode is properly bollocks. An already cack practical joke is pushed so hard, far beyond its best before date. And then all the other comedic moments are signposted so clearly that you can hear the setup, pause the episode, write down what you think the punchline will be, and lo and behold, you'll have written half of the episode's script. I can't believe it. This is the Mariana's Trench of number 9. Last Gasp was intentionally over the top, but I was able to detect that and thought its plan was executed brilliantly. Here, the plan was executed exactly as it was planned, but sorry lads, it was a bloody annoying plan. This even takes the top spot, or should I say bottom spot, over Last Night of the Proms. The daughter is pretty normal, but everyone else in this episode is totally insufferable, and mental things just happen for the sake of it. Drunken rambling, electrocutions, male strippers. Yeah, that's right, you heard. Nana's party has it all, but I wanted absolutely none of it. Right, that's it, we're done, thank Christ. Episode 6, Seance Time. Thank Christ, this is more like it. Right, much like The Harrowing, we return to a heavily horror-themed episode for the finale. This one centres around a medium, Madame Talbot, naturally a reference to Larry Talbot from The Wolfman, who encounters a fortune teller. She's a very mysterious, shadowy figure, shrouded in a black veil and speaking in a shrill voice. A woman, Tina, decides to let Madame Talbot contact the astral plane, known as Summerland, to see if there's anyone on the other side of relevance to her. Talbot reveals her eyes to be vacant white voids as she carries on the procedure, with demonic consequences. The most demonic consequences possible. It's a prank TV show. All the joys of the behind-the-scenes workings of hidden camera reality series, and in this show's case, Scaredy Cam, the aim of the game is to provide the funniest shock reactions. Shea Smith plays the host, Terry, who is very much a dickhead. Scaredy Cam was cancelled in the past, but now it's being revived on a much smaller TV channel than its original ITV slot. After some moments of seeing the show running when the cameras aren't rolling, we get our next scare victim, Pemberton, who can't stop swearing. He just takes the piss and doesn't take the situation seriously at all. He's a typical bloke's bloke who just can't be arsed with scenario whatsoever because he's been put up for it by his mates. And that makes for a lot of funny moments. The fact the room hasn't been properly reset to the first time we saw it as an audience makes the Pemberton recording session hilarious, as it's just issue after issue and we have full context for it. It's pristine. But then things start going even more off script, as there are some demonic occurrences that are not planned. Things go a bit tits up when Pemberton knocks out the blue demon dwarf played by Dan Starkey and ends up accidentally killing him. Amidst the confusion and uproar, actual ghostly voices can be heard, and they possess the dwarf. Twist time. Throughout the episode, it's been mentioned that Scaredy Cam was originally dropped from ITV after a prank where Terry, dressed as a gorilla, frightened a little boy and made him wet himself on live TV. The spirit that has taken over the dwarf is that same boy, who reveals that after the embarrassment he endured, he killed himself by jumping in the river, and now he's back to get revenge on the production team. The shot where Terry turns and the boy's dead, wet body is lying in the crib is haunting, so well framed for the scare to go through you. This is a cracker of a finale. I definitely prefer it to The Harrowing. It progressively built into being more interesting as it went on. The initial setup of it being a genuine seance was overplayed in a way it seemed unrealistic anyway. Then all the behind the scenes moments with the crew kinda dragged slightly, but in hindsight it was the correct speed to move through the story, as the third act with Pemberton as the joking victim was brilliantly executed, with funny bits crammed in to the brim, and then the final shift into horror with the real ghost was very chilling. All in all, each act gets stronger as the episode advances towards a frightening climax and brings a lovely solid ending to Series 2. But what do I think of Series 2 overall? Honestly, it's quite wobbly. You have two of the very best episodes ever, one of the absolute worst episodes ever, and a couple of average ones, with a finale that itself zigzags in quality and execution. My favourite from this series, unsurprisingly, is Cold Comfort, with the 12 Days of Christine a close second. La Couchette and Elizabeth Gadge are decent, but I wouldn't rush to watch them again, especially Couchette. Seance Time was more enjoyable for me on my rewatch for this review and has a great balance of horror and comedy. But the scariest episode of all is Nana's Party. Honestly, I still can't compute what the hell happened there. So that's my full review and breakdown of Inside Number 9 Series 2. Next time I'll be putting out a Christmas special episode for the channel where I do an in-depth review of The Devil of Christmas. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep up to date with all my future Inside Number 9 content, please do hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you can remain in the loop. And why not check out our other content on the channel, such as our Friday Fright Time horror movie reviews. Thanks everyone, and I'll be sure to see you next time inside Number 9.